ever hear voices in the wind? Noises behind unopened doors? Closing your eyes might work for others, but for you, there's always the After Dark podcast. Welcome back, guys, to the After Dark podcast episode. If I am not mistaken, it is episode 12 of the After Dark podcast. So, let me get the welcome mat out. Welcome to the After Dark podcast. S2. Boom. There you go. So, shoot. Hold on. Give me 1 second. I'm gonna address everything clearly right now. Just let me go get my phone. Hold up. 1 second. Okay, so I apologize for that. I had to go get my phone to see. Okay, so first and foremost, I do apologize for the noise in the background. I'm guessing that there's a party going on outside. I am not too sure, and you know, I wouldn't want to be invited anyways, because I'd rather be here with you guys, sharing our stories and scary stories, you know. So yeah, so that is that. Next is, you know, hopefully you guys are having a really good Saturday. It's the weekend and, you know, it's hot. Even though if it's autumn, it's still hot. You know, I'm pissed because the hotness does not just want to leave. Let the cold have its moment. Hotness, please. Oh my god, I don't know what to think. But yeah, so the After Dark podcast, it is this is the last weekend both I think all of us are gonna share, because you know, next week, middle of the week, Wednesday, October ends. I apologize, I'm about to sneeze. Okay, wait a minute. It's gone. Oh my god, I hate it. So you know, it's it's you know, heartbreaking for me, because you know, a couple months ago I told myself, you know, I want to be live streaming some games, and then, you know, I remembered a promise and an idea I had for a radio talk show about just reading horror stories, and look, here I am reading you guys some horror stories, and I'm having a blast, you know. So let's go out with the weekend with a blast. Now, that's out of the way. 1, 2, the After Dark podcast, it is like, I believe, like 30 minutes earlier than usual, because you know, it's a special day tomorrow. It's the dad unit's birthday, and I am gonna go and help out in the kitchen, because as you guys may know, your boy is a chef, and like I said, you know, hashtag broke boys. I ain't about to go get them, okay? You know what I'm saying? I mean, I had 2 hands and the ability to make cake. I will make cake for my papa, and you know, it's gonna be all good and dandy. So, you know, tomorrow it's his birthday, and I'm gonna help out. And tomorrow I might do the same thing. Start the podcast earlier, like around this time, you know, because you know, it's his birthday, and you know, I wanna hang out with the old man, you know. So, you know, just hang out with your parents. It's fun. It's, you know, they're outdated. Hey, they're your parents, and if it's their birthday, you know, get everything done right away and have a blast with them. You know what I'm saying? So, without further ado, let's continue with where we left off yesterday. We left off yesterday by reading some awesome stories. You know, Neon Man decided, you know, like he wanted me to read some stories to him, and I did. You know, so if you guys have any story that you guys want me to read, put them on in the chat right now, or in the description below. So, once again, I do apologize if you guys do hear the noise in the background. I am trying to do my best to like avert myself from the noise in the back, but it's turning to be difficult because they're blasting that music tenfold. You know, they're turning it up to 11. Normally, I would say, yeah, you know, turn it up to 11, but I am not for that type of music. But something fell. Hold up. Okay. Without further ado, let's continue with these scary stories. And this one's called Drinking Water. And it is an urban legend from Japan. And here we go. Oh, by the way, I don't own, let me just get this out of the way. I do not own, like, the picture that you guys are seeing in the background. I don't own it. It's the gift is by somebody. I don't know who it is. So if you know your gift, you know, claim it as yours. But yeah, once again, let me apologize for the noise in the background. You know, there's a party outside, and my mom is trying to do things in the kitchen. And after this podcast, I am gonna go help out a little bit. So here we go. There was a little girl who lived in an apartment building. One day, she told her mother she was going out to play with her friends. Hours later, when the girl's mother went down to call her for dinner, she realized that her daughter was nowhere to be found. The mother asked all the kids who lived in the apartment building if they had seen her daughter. They all told her that they hadn't seen the little girl all day. The awful realization sank. The little girl was missing. The girl's parents called the police, and a search of the surrounding area was launched. All of the other parents in the apartment building joined in search, but it was fruitless. In the end, the little girl was never found. 3 months later, the residents of the apartment complex began to complain about the drinking water supply. Whenever they turned on the water taps in their apartment, they noticed a strange odor. Gradually, the apartment manager started to receive more and more complaints from the residents about the taste and the smell of the water. He decided that something had to be done and told the janitor to test out the water in the storage tanks on the roof. The janitor went onto the roof and began removing the lids from the tanks and checking the chemical contents in the water. When he got to the last tank, he lifted the lid and was hit with an overpowering stench. Gazing down into the murky depths, he was able to make out something floating in the water. It was a decomposing body of a child. After the police conducted an autopsy, they were able to confirm that it was the corpse of the little girl who had gone missing 3 months before. It seemed that she had been playing on the roof when the lid of the water storage tank was temporarily removed. Apparently, she looked into the tank and must have accidentally fallen into the water and drowned. The little girl's corpse lay there, undisturbed, for 3 whole months. And for 3 whole months, the inhabitants of the apartments had unknowingly been drinking the water that the little girl's decomposing corpse was floating in. Wow. I mean, there's a similar story here in California about the Roosevelt Hotel, where this Canadian student all of a sudden went missing. And they had proof of her disappearing. And, you know, apparently she was going mad, but it turns out when they did the autopsy on her, it wasn't any drug-related, you know, drug-related incident. So yeah, so, you know, be careful with your kids, people. If you guys are living in an apartment, please don't let them go on top or in the basement, because they have no business there, you know. I mean, just keep an eye on them. It's better to be safe than sorry, you know. So let me point out that right now I'm not drinking any tea because, like I said, it is early. 1, 2, I have my water bottle here. This way, the thing that happened yesterday, where I almost had my throat dry, doesn't happen again today. So let's continue with another story. And this one, this one is interesting. This one got my eye. It's called Family Portrait. A long time ago, there was a man who went out hunting in the woods. As night fell, he found himself in an unfamiliar part of the forest. He walked and walked, but he couldn't find his way home. Wandering aimlessly in the dark, he eventually came to a small clearing where an old ramshackle cabin stood. Tired and weary, he decided to see if he could stay for the night. When he came closer to the cabin, he saw that the door was standing ajar, poking his head inside. He could see the little cabin was completely empty, but there was a bed and a fire burning in the fireplace. The hunter threw himself in the bed and decided to sleep there for the night. If the owners came back, he would ask his permission in the morning. Lying in the bed half asleep, he looked around and was surprised to see walls were covered with paintings. There appeared to be family portraits, all framed and painted in incredible detail. They seemed very lifelike, and without exception, each family portrait was uglier than the next. The hideous faces in the paintings made him uncomfortably uneasy. The way they were painted made it seem as if the eyes were staring directly at him. It was incredibly unnerving. He decided that the only way he was going to get some sleep was to ignore the hideous faces staring at him. So he turned to his side, facing the wall, pulled the blanket over his head, and drifted off to sleep. In the morning, the hunter woke up to find the cabin bathed in sunlight. Then he looked up. He discovered that there were no family portraits in the wall of the cabin, only windows. Wow. I mean, that is some Harry Potter stuff right there, right? I haven't seen Harry Potter in a while, but I know that their portraits move, and you know, it's interesting. Like, I wouldn't mind having a portrait that moved around. That'd be creepy, but that'd be interesting as well. But yeah, it's very interesting. Very interesting. And right now outside, they're singing happy birthday to somebody. I wonder who it is. But happy birthday to whoever it is. So let's keep going. This was called Strange Photos. Charles found the old book when he was 12 years old. It was stuck in behind an old bookcase in the attic of his house. The cover of the book was missing, and so were some of the pages inside. It was a book of frightening ghost stories, but without the cover. Charles could never been sure if the stories were real or just made up. Lying in bed at night, Charles would read the stories quietly to himself. They terrified him, but for some reason he couldn't stop himself from reading each and one of the stories. I lost my place. Oh no. Okay. Yeah, I lost my place. Okay, it's where's real? Okay. What? Hold up. I lost my place. Hold up. Let's just start it over. Charles found an old book when he was 12 years old, stuck behind the wall. The cover of the mystery, the frightening stories. Without the cover, Charles would never been sure the stories were real or just made up. Lying in bed at night, Charles they could stop reading from each one and again. His heart would be pounding and his breath would catch in his throat. Yet he still felt unable to put the book down. There was only one illustration in the book, a solitary strange photograph in the middle pages. Charles could never bear to look at it. Something in the photo made him some of the photo unnerved him, but he found himself string at it for hours. He never understood why the photograph held such a strange fascination for him. There was something in the picture that would cause him such fear and dread. It merely showed an empty metal staircase leading down to the darkness. Could it be the fear of something or someone lurking in the darkness? Perhaps it was the fact that the rusty metal steps looked as if they would be covered in blood. some reason, the photo terrified him so much that he finally reached a breaking point. He ripped it out of the book and threw it into the trash. Charles thought that would be at the end of it, but he found that he was unable to get the picture out of his mind. When he fell asleep at night, he would see an empty metal staircase in his nightmares, and he always woke up drenched in a cold sweat. The strange photo haunted him for years. As he got older, he would often be reminded of the photo, and then the nightmares would start again. It was as if what he had seen in the photos could never be unseen. Walking home from college one night, Charles took a shortcut through a dark alleyway and came up to a scene that seemed all too familiar to him. Up ahead, he could see the same rusty metal staircase that had haunted him in his dreams for many years. Charles felt a chill go up his spine, and he had the sudden urge to flee. But the curiosity got the better of him. He had to find out why the staircase had been disturbing him. Charles approached the staircase cautiously, staring down into the darkness and lay below. In his terror, his mind began to recognize strange shapes in the pitch black. He could hear odd noises and moans coming from the underground. As Charles stood at the top of the stairs, he began shaking with fear. He was about to run and leave when he heard something strange, a whisper or a low groan. He looked down and started screaming. Okay, that was interesting. There's a picture here that shows stairs, but it doesn't show what he was scared of. So, just like Finn said yesterday when we were in chat, it's not what you're afraid of. It's not that you're afraid of the dark. It's because you're afraid of what's inside the darkness. So, hey, what can be more scarier than finding something inside the darkness, right? So, let's move on to another story before I lose all my nerve and oh god, this episode is gonna be a very loud one because of the background noise. So once again, I do apologize for that. I have no power over it, and I just wish they would just tone it down a little bit. Nobody needs to hear their noise, but hey, whatever. This next story is called Scarecrow. There was an old farmer in Arizona who owned the best farms in the area. Everybody said his crops were the best, and people came from all over to buy their goods from him. Whenever people asked him how he was able to grow such good quality crops, the old farmer would just say it was all down to his scarecrow. That old scarecrow is the one I have to thank, said the farmer. He makes sure that no crows or critters or pests come near my crops. The old farmer had built a scarecrow himself, and it was a fearsome sight. He spent months working on it, and it makes it as scary as possible. He knew how important it was to keep pests away from the crops, so he gave it an enormous straw arms that stretched for about 6 feet, and big long legs that made it all as tall as a tree. But the scariest thing about the scarecrow was his head. The farmer carved it himself out of a huge pumpkin. He spent countless days and nights perfecting his design until it was perfect. The scarecrow's face and head was so grotesque and ugly that even he was sometimes scared to look at it. But it was very effective, scaring away the rodents and the birds that ventured near. The neighboring farms were owned by 2 young men who were brothers named Josh and Harold. They were lazy and never did too much work around the farm, which resulted in their crops being bad. They were jealous of the old farmer's success, and they were plotting against him, as if he could drive him away out of business. They could take over his farm and make more money. So one night, the brothers decided to sneak into the old farmland. They stole his prized scarecrow and brought it back to their own house, where they stuffed it in an old closet so nobody would find it. The next day, the farmer woke up to find his hideous scarecrow missing and all his crops being eaten by rats and crows. He fell to his knees and cried, knowing that his farm would soon be out of business.
Meanwhile, the brother Josh and Harold were watching from their own property and couldn't help but laugh out loud when they saw the old man's tears out of grief. Hearing the laughter, the old man came over and asked if they knew what happened to his scarecrow. The brothers looked at him right in the eye and said they had no idea where his precious scarecrow might be. But you know I'll go out of business, and I'll have to sell my farm if I can't find my scarecrow, said the farmer. Josh just laughed in his face, saying, "That's just your tough luck, isn't it?" "Sucks to be you," giggled Harold. The old farmer walked slowly back to his house, his head hanging low in defeat and depression. That night, as Josh and Harold had trouble sleeping, not because they felt any remorse, but because they couldn't get the image out of the scarecrow's horrible twisted face out of their mind. They decided that they would never be able to sleep as long as that ugly pumpkin head was still in their house, so they got up and dragged the scarecrow out of the closet. Harold took a baseball bat and smashed the scarecrow's head to pieces until all that was left was fists of pumpkin strewn around the floor. The brothers swept the pumpkin head pieces and threw them all in the trash. Then they went back to bed and soon fell asleep, having put up all thoughts and disgusting scarecrow faces out of their heads. Sometime after midnight, Josh and Harold were awoken by the sound of scratching and clawing out of their bedroom door. "Did you forget to put the dog out?" asked Harold, sleeping. "We don't have a dog," stammered Josh. Suddenly the bedroom door burst open and a solitary long straw arm snaked in through the opening. Then a second arm thrashed around, followed by two long stick legs. The brothers were frozen in fear and could only look with horror as the headless scarecrow's body rose up on its long stick legs, and its long arms reached out from them in the darkness. Harold felt a cold, sinewy straw claw close around his ankle and screamed as loud as he could. He begged his brother Josh to help him, but Josh was already running out of the bedroom. Fleeing in terror, he ran down the hallway, crashed through the front door, and out onto the moonlight road. He ran as fast as his legs could carry him, puffing and panting and screaming at the top of his voice as he passed his neighbor's house. He saw the old farmer standing in his gate in the moonlight. He could see the farmer just staring at him with a strange smile on his face. Josh kept running with bare feet slapping against the rough graveled road. He glanced back over his shoulder and saw something that scared him to his very soul. He saw the scarecrow running along the road, closing behind him. It was gaining on him, coming closer and closer, and that wasn't all he saw. He noticed that the scarecrow had a brand new head that looked a lot like Harold. The end. Vince, welcome to the After Dark podcast. Hopefully you're having a really good evening tonight, and a good night. I don't know, Vince. I don't know what happened in your end, but I did started the podcast a lot earlier because, like I said, tomorrow is the dad unit's birthday, and I am helping out in the kitchen. And like I said, we're broke boys, and we don't want to spend money on cake. If I can make it, I'll do it. I can make a couple cakes for him. Why not? But yeah, so we did start it earlier, like around 23 minutes ago. So and I do apologize if you do hear music in the background. I did say that there is sort of a party going on outside. I'm not too sure, and I can't go outside and and be like, hey, cut it out, so I do apologize for that. And do your homework, Vince. It's very important that you do your homework. And like I said, tomorrow I might do the same thing. I might start at 8:30, which in your case I think it's gonna be around 10:30. I think 10:30, 8:30, and I'm gonna finish at 9:30, which is 11:30 over there where you're at, because of the same thing. I wanna spend some time with the old man and see what happens. Sing a couple songs for his birthday and have a good time. But homework is important, Finn. So without further ado, let's keep going with the horror stories. By the way, I do apologize once again for the noise in the background. Hopefully by tomorrow these guys are over. And so here we go. This next story is called Knock Knock. It's based on an urban legend, apparently. So here we go. As their mother was leaving, they told her children not to open the door under any circumstances. If anyone knocks, don't answer it, she told them. But the boy and his sister didn't pay attention to his mother's warnings. They thought she was being too careful. They figured they could take care of themselves in any situation. About an hour after her parents left, the kids heard a knock, knock, knock on the front door. They decided to ignore it, but again, they heard knock, knock, knock. It happened again and again, and it grew louder each time. Eventually, the girl couldn't stand it anymore, and she told her brother she was going to answer the door. The boy reminded her of their mother's warnings. The girl just wouldn't listen. Again, they heard the knock, knock, knock on the door. Finally, the sister went downstairs. Her brother lay on the sofa watching TV. He heard his sister's footsteps walking down the stairs. He heard her asking loudly, "Who is it?" He heard her open the lock and the front door. Then he heard only silence. He lay there for a while listening for any noise, but heard nothing. Eventually, he started getting scared. His sister still hadn't returned. He was afraid to call out to his sister, so he sneaked out of the back door and made his way to the neighbor's house. When he went to their house, his neighbors was watching the local news channel on TV. The news anchor on the TV was talking about a murderer. Then he showed a reporter live on the scene of the murder. The neighbor said to the boy, "Hey, that looks like your house." The boy was shaking in fear. That is my house," he said. "And that's my front door." Wow. So, yeah, it never turns out good, Fins. And I will, I'll tell the old man that you said happy birthday, man. It's no problem, Like I said, we're all friends, and we're all grateful that our parents are good, good and healthy and strong. So yeah, Fins. Oof, I don't know what to say. If you're ever alone, don't ever open the door. Because it's like I always say. If I live in a house, right? Like let's say if you live in a house, your parent live in a house, mom and dad, and his sister, they all live in the same house, right? Why would they be knocking on a door? They always have their keys to open the door, So, if you hear knocking on the door, don't open it. But if you hear like keys jingling, stay cautious. But, just keep in mind that it could be your parents. So, wow, this was interesting. And yeah, Fins, it always goes wrong for the kids. So, let's move on to the other story, and this one's called Balthasar. I'm a single mother. My husband left me a few years ago for another woman. Ever since then, I have been raising two sons alone. Eric is 8 years old, and Andrew is just 6. The other day, I was in the kitchen preparing dinner. I saw Andrew in the backyard. He was playing football with someone, but I couldn't see who it was. All I could see was Andrew kicking the ball and someone else was kicking it back to him. I assumed it was his brother Eric. I was startled when I heard footsteps coming down the stairs and Eric came in and sat down at the table. I wonder who Andrew was playing with. My children are not allowed to invite anybody in the house without my permission, so I called Andrew to come in for dinner. Annoyed, I asked him, "What are you doing?" "I was playing with my friend," he replied. "What friend?" I asked. "You know you're not allowed to invite anybody over without permission." "No, Mom. My friend from the tree," he said. "He likes to fly." Irritated, I told him to stop making things up. Andrew insisted that it was true. He said his friend didn't want to come inside the house because he might scare me. What? He might scare me. Okay, that was weird. I realized he must have an imaginary friend, so I started asking questions. What's your name? What's your friend's name?" I asked. Balthasar. Balthasar, Mom. And where does he live? I don't know, he replied. But he always comes to play. What kind of games do you play? All sorts of games. He always comes down from the tree and asks if I want to fly with him. Okay. At the moment, I felt a shiver run through my body. I heard the sound of laughter coming from the backyard. I got up to see who it was, but when I peered out the window, I couldn't see anything. It's him, Mom, said Andrew. He's waiting for me to come out and play. For some reason, this unnerved me. I suppose I wanted to prove myself that this Balthasar wasn't real. So I told Andrew to invite him in to have dinner with us. Without saying anything, Andrew got up and walked over to the door. He beckoned with his hand, then came back and sat down at the table again. I looked at the doorway, half expecting to see someone come in, but there was no one. Stop staring at the door, Mom, said Andrew. He's already here. I told Eric to stop playing around and started to scold him. Eric began to chuckle. Then the chuckling got louder and turned into crackling laughter. It sent a chill down my spine. I scolded Eric, but he wouldn't stop. His cackling just grew louder and louder. It sounded evil and malicious. I told you not to play with Eric, said Andrew. Eric could not stop laughing, and Andrew just sat there calmly eating his dinner. I shouted at Eric and told him to stop playing around. All of a sudden, he stopped laughing and grabbed my hand. Then, in a deep, rasping voice, he said, "You also want to fly." Then, he burst into the ghoulish laughter again. I was so disturbed by his behavior that I left the room and went upstairs to calm down. I don't know why, but his laughter sent chills down my spine. It was unsettling. I could still hear it coming from the kitchen. After a while, everything was silent. When I went downstairs again, the boys were back to normal, playing video games on TV. The next day, I went to work early. By the time the children returned home from school, I was already preparing dinner. Everyone seemed normal. I told the boys to wash their hands, and they sat down at the table. I served their meals. Everything seemed normal, until I asked my son what happened the day before. Eric's face went blank. He didn't seem to remember anything about it. Balthasar was eating with us, Andrew said casually, but Balthasar never came to sit down at the table, I said. He did, Mom, Andrew insisted. Are you sure? I asked. Why didn't I see him? Mom, you told me to invite Balthasar to dinner, and I did what you said. What do you and Balthasar do together, I asked. When Balthasar comes to play with me, he flies down from the tree, he said. We play games, but sometimes he gets angry because he doesn't like losing. That's when he lets me fly and just stays in the ground playing alone. When I heard those words, my skin began to crawl, and I asked Andrew about what happened yesterday when his brother started laughing. Balthasar came into the house yesterday, but he was angry because he didn't like Eric. So he let Eric fly, and he ate with us. Right? I'm confused. And do you remember flying, Eric? I asked. No, Mom, Eric replied. I just remembered I was eating and you were sitting at the table. Then I closed my eyes, and when I opened them, you were upstairs in your room. I felt sick to my stomach and began to understand what he was saying. Balthasar had possessed my son Eric right in front of my eyes. Andrew, who is Balthasar? I demanded. Mom, remember those two children who were burned up in the fire? When he said that, my blood ran cold on my veins. Yes, I answered hoarsely. Years ago, in a house not far from where we live, a family had been killed, and the house had been set on fire. It burned to the ground. All they found afterwards were charred remains. But that happened all a long time ago, before my sons were ever even born. How could they know about it? Well, the boy Balthasar, Andrew said. Who told you about that fire? I demanded. Was it the other children in school? No, it was Balthasar, Andrew said. Sometimes at night he comes down from the trees and he just stands there very still watching you while you sleep. I keep telling him you don't like being stared at, but he doesn't listen. My stomach was churning and I felt I was going to throw up. What did he tell you about the fire? I managed to croak. He told me one night he heard noises in his house and they woke him up. And when he peeked out the window at the door of his room, he saw his dad lying dead in the ground. And when he heard the scream and saw two men cutting his mother's throat, he said he and his sister ran and hid in the closet, and they were really scared. After a while, they didn't hear anything outside, but they were still afraid to leave, and they smelled smoke, and they couldn't see and started getting really hot. The last thing he remembers before he fell asleep was that his whole body was on fire. After hearing this, I was speechless. I've never been so scared in my life, and the worst thing is, my children didn't know what was happening. Since then, I haven't been able to sleep a wink. I don't know what to do. I need help. My children are being possessed, and how can I sleep knowing that a dead child is watching me intently at my bedside? Ooh, I mean, we never really want to know that something or someone is just watching us sleep. That was sort of like a longish story. I had a drink a little water out of that one, but yeah, that's interesting. That's very interesting. Fortunately for me, this is why I like living in the second floor of any apartment. If you wanna, if you wanna peek through my window, you're gonna have to either climb a tree or have the same, level as I am, because unless you're Spider-Man, you ain't getting no peek from me. Alright, so let's go to another story. These are interesting. Very interesting. So far, don't let your kids play alone, pretty much. But why would she call the police though? Like, what would she say? Like, hey, yeah, I have an emergency. My kids are playing with a kid named Balthazar who died a couple years ago, and now he's possessing them, and I am being stared at creepily while I sleep. I don't know if the police would believe her fits. As adults, people tend to not listen to reason. That's why in horror movies it's a staple for them to have parents who say, "Oh no, it's just your imagination," and then all of a sudden they see the gruesome reality that is ghosts and demons, but it's all too late. Yeah. That's why when you guys grow up to be adults, always believe in ghosts. No matter what they say, no matter what they tell you, they're always out there somewhere, just sitting there in the dark, waiting for their opportunity to come to watch you guys sleep. I mean, worst case scenario, the ghost might even go inside the bathroom with you, which is kind of creepy. Ghost, know your boundaries, ghost. You can watch me sleep, I get it, but when you go into the bathroom with me, you are crossing the line. So mind your peepers. A little something out there. So this next one's called Dark and Lonely Road. Okay. Every night you sit there in the comfort and safety of your house, but you have no idea what's going on outside in the darkness. Not too far from your house, there is a dark place, a dark and lonely place. You may not know about it, but there is. All over the country, in small towns and cities, there are so many of these places, of these dark and lonely places. When I was a young boy, I lived in a small town. Johnny Craig lived across the street from me. I was friends with his big brother. He was just a baby then. I saw him grow up fast, but I never paid too much attention to him. Sometimes in the evenings, my mother would send me out to the local store to buy a carton of milk or a bag of sugar. On the way to the shop, I had to pass a long, dark stretch of road. During the day, it was just a shady place, lined with old, gnarled trees and vacant lots. There were nothing had. Okay, there's the grammar again. This is the scariest part of the whole story, that the grammar doesn't add up. During the day, it was just a shady place lined with old gnarled trees and vacant lots. And vacant lots were where nothing had been built and nothing was ever going to be built. Okay? I was never afraid of it by day, but at night it was a different place, a lonesome place, a place of darkness and strangeness, a place of terror and fear. There were no houses nearby, no street lights. It was pitch black as could be, dark as the deepest night. The tall trees blocked out the moon and the stars, casting their long shadows across the road. Whatever you had to go that way, you would walk slower and slower. It was like stepping into a dark tunnel. Behind you were the lights of the houses, the sounds of cars and people walking along the sidewalk. Ahead of you, there was just a long, lonely stretch of darkness in which everything could be lurking or anything at all. Every time I had to pass that place at night, I dreaded. I kept hoping that somebody would come along so I wouldn't have to walk alone, but nobody ever came. As I walked along the dark stretch of road, I would keep my eyes fixed on the streets and trees, half expecting to see something or someone lurking there in the darkness. Well, let me pause this and let me say how great it would have been if it would have said my outro, you know? That would have been cool. I would keep my eyes fixed on the street and trees, half expecting to see something or someone lurking after dark. That would be cool. Anyways, let's continue. Out of the corner of my eye, I would catch glimpses of misshapen figures crouching there in pitch black, waiting for the moment when they would burst forth and pounce on me. Then, in that silent and isolated area, they would been tearing me and rendering me and doing unspeakable things to me, and nobody would ever see me again. I am not sure what I expected to see lurking in that lonely place at night. My imagination always got the better of me. In my mind, it was a hideous creature somewhere between an animal and man. It had long, spindly limbs and huge, sharp claws. It had wet, slimy skin and eyes that burned like fire. I imagined it hiding in the branches of these old trees, dropping down without a sound, and stalking the unwary boys and girls who passed along the dark and lonely road at night. One night, it almost got me. I was walking down the lonely road, and all of a sudden, there wasn't any light up ahead. That's when I knew it was coming. I could just feel it, waiting in the darkness. I started running desperate to get away, but I could feel it behind me. It was gaining on me. I could feel its breath on the back of my neck. I ran and ran as fast as I could. I ran until I thought my heart would burst. It almost had me in its clutches, but I managed to get away. When I got back to the safety of my house, I looked at myself in the mirror, and there was a long, jagged rip in the back of my shirt, as if a sharp claw had tried to grab me and just missed me by an inch. That scared me really bad, and afterwards I hated going down that lonely road ever again. Some nights I won't come back, I warned my mother. She just laughed and told me not to be silly. There's something out there in the dark, I told her. There's something in the dark that isn't there in the light, she assured me. What do adults know about the world? Grown-ups think that they know everything. They place their trust in what they read, but they only read what is reported on the newspapers and on TV. They drive around in cars and never have to walk anywhere at night. They don't know what goes on out there in the dark, in the wretched, lonely places where no light ever shines and the darkness hangs like a cloud in the ground, and no birds ever sing. As I grew older, okay. I skipped one. I know they wouldn't believe me. I knew there was nothing I could do to say to convince them that something or someone lived down there among the trees, and that dark and on the dark, long stretch of road. As I grew older, I gradually forgot about the lonely road. I got taller. I went to high school. I started playing football. I learned to drive, and I started dating girls. The years passed by, and somehow I forgot about the thing that lurked there in the darkness. The memory of it still remained in a distant corner of my mind, but it was just a memory locked away in childhood. The years passed by, but I never thought about the other kids who had walked down there, down the dark and lonely road again. 3 days ago, Johnny Craig went missing. He lived across the street from me. I was friends with his big brother. He was just a baby then. So I'm growing up, but I never paid too much attention to what? Oh, okay. That was just okay. They found him in the trees in that dark and lonely stretch of road. His body was torn up and ripped and crushed, almost beyond recognition. The police said he had been mauled by some kind of animal. Let the car pass. The moment I heard about it, I knew what happened. Johnny Craig had been murdered by the thing my childhood fears had created. The thing I had conjured up in my imagination, and I had left the dark and lonely stretch of road. I had left it there to wait for some scared little boy who happened to be walking home one dark night. A little boy who couldn't run as fast as I could run. After that, the town cut the trees down and put up street lights that stretched out the road. The road isn't dark and lonely anymore. The thing that lurked there is gone now. It's gone somewhere else, where the people are unsuspecting, some other small town. A small town like yours, where it will wait again, just as it did here. It will wait for some other frightened little boy or girl to come along. It's only a matter of time. Thank you, Vince, for coming by. I really do appreciate it. I am sorry that I didn't get to your comment earlier. I just had to get this done. But thank you so much for coming, Vince. I really do appreciate it. And you do your homework, man. And hey, remember, there's no shame in sleeping with the nightlight. All right. We don't want the gruesome monsters to come out at us. So. And yeah, Vince, I did see the Stranger Things, and I'm happy I did see it because right now, as I stand, it's one of my favorite TV shows. So, Stranger Things is a very good TV show. If you have Netflix, 2 seasons. Hopefully, there's a 3rd one coming out, and I can, waste my time in watching it. So, but yes, people, please pay attention to your kids. Pay attention to your little brothers or little sisters. There's something out there, alright? Us adults, well, actually, no, scratch that. Even though I am an adult, a young adult, I still believe in whatever is out there, whatever it is out there in the trees, in the dark, lonely roads, where no light ever shines, and no one dares to walk alone. I should become a poet. But that's the story for another day. But, yes. Don't ever walk alone, people. What do I keep telling you guys at the end of my live stream? Don't ever walk alone on an empty street. And bring your flashlight, so, just in case. Let's move on. Oh, no. Not that one. Because it has Christmas on it. And there is going to be a special on Christmas, so. Skip that one. Let me grab my water. and take a sip of water. Let's read a couple more, and then, unfortunately, episode 12 is gonna have to come to a close because, like I said, I have to go and help out in the kitchen. This next one is called Creature in the Village. My name is Magda, and I'm 26 years old. I work in an office in the city on weekends. I used to love to get away from all the hustle and bustle and take a trip down to the countryside. Luckily, I have a cottage in a small village which is located right at the edge of the forest. How I used to love to get out of the city and spend the weekends in my little cottage. Why did I stop? I'll tell you. After a hard week at work, I needed a rest, so I decided to get out of town. I went home, packed my bags, threw them in the trunk, and drove off. When I arrived in the village, it was late in the evening, and I was tired of the long drive. I went straight to bed and fell asleep quickly. In the middle of the night, I was awoken by the sound of my car alarm going off. I looked out the window, but there was nobody in sight. I found my car keys and pressed the button to shut off the alarm. When the awful noise stopped, I lay down again and tried to fall back to sleep. All of a sudden, the alarm went off again. I didn't feel like getting up, so I just grabbed the keys and pressed the button again. Everything was peacefully and quiet. 5 minutes later, the alarm went off a third time. Once or twice could have been an accident, but now I was wondering what was going on. Could someone be playing a trick on me in the middle of the night? I got up again and pressed the button to turn off the alarm, but this time I didn't lay down. I stood at the curtains and watched. After a few minutes, I saw something in the light of the moon. A shadow emerged from the bushes and slowly approached the car. I could just about make the shape of it. It was something tall, skinny, and black. The figure reached out with the long, thin arms and knocked on the car. The alarm went off again, and quick as a flash, the dark figure retreated back into the bushes. At that moment, I realized that it was what was going on and began shaking with fear. I turned off the alarm and continued to watch. The thing emerged from the bushes again and slid silently into the gate. I threw a hand through them and removed the portion holding the gate closed. I was paralyzed with fear and I couldn't move. My mind was covered by panic thoughts. What was it? What did it want from me? What was it doing? Would it ever go away? A shiver ran down through my body and my head down to my toes. My mouth was dry and my heart was beating fast. I was so tense. I was gritting my teeth, clenched my hands into a fist. I got control of myself and ran down the stairs as fast as my legs could carry me to the floor. I wanted to look for something I could use to protect myself. However, just as I was about to switch on the light, I suddenly froze in my tracks. The dark figure was at my window. It was pressed up against the glass, staring in, looking to see whether or not there was someone home. I immediately ducked down behind the sofa and peered out. That's when I realized what all these tricks with the car were for. It was trying to lure its victims outside. I could not take my eyes off its hideous face. The skin was the color of ash and covered with wrinkles. Its eyes were small, beady, and completely black. Instead of a nose, there were two ragged holes. It didn't have any lips, just 2 rows of sharp yellow teeth. Its breathing was so heavy and hoarse that it was misting up the window. I just knew it was not going to go away. After standing in the window for a few moments, I heard a rustling noise and it came from the front door. I watched as it tried to push its fingers through the gap under the door. The handle began to twitch wildly up and down, and then the creature emitted a chilling sound. It was not like a human voice. It was a deep, beastly growl, like an angry dog chewing on a bone. I knew that if it heard me, it would keep trying until it found a way to get inside the house. I just crouched down behind the sofa, hiding in the shadows, and I desperately try not to make a sound. Tears began involuntarily streaming down my face. No matter how much I tried to stop them, I could feel my pulse pounding in my temples, and I was shaking like a leaf, just waiting for it to end. I don't know how long I cowered there. I must have passed out. When I woke up and looked at the door, the creature was gone. The door was still in place, and everything seemed secure. I have never been so relieved in my life. I ran upstairs and looked out the window. It was light outside, and there was no sign of anything wrong. Taking a chance, I grabbed my keys without stopping to collect any of my thoughts and things, and I ran to the car. I jumped in, locked the door, and drove away from the village as fast as I could. I didn't stop driving until I got back to the city. When I got back to my apartment, I turned the radio and heard the news reports. The announcer said that in the village, dead bodies of 2 girls had been discovered. Their corpses had been mutilated and dumped in the swamp. I guess the creature found what it was looking for. Wow. I mean, ooh, as much as I do love the countryside, I do love the peacefulness and the scenery. It's all so beautiful, but you know, it's interesting. It's interesting. I do believe that the story of the rake, the creepypasta of the rake, was made for the countryside, I believe. But you know, it is what it is. So let's continue with another story. But before we do, let me start by saying that if you guys are listening to my podcast, please, in the car, I do hope that the car is off or parked, because, you know, I don't want you guys to be playing with your phone while you drive. You know, put the After Dark podcast on speaker, or put me in the auxiliary cable and listen to my beautiful voice in the 4 corners of your car, because, like I said, playing with your phone while you drive is a hazard. Please, do not play with your phones while you drive. Don't text and drive. Don't call and drive. You know, don't pick up the phone and drive. You know, just put me on speaker and set me to the side. You know, and then turn me off when you get to your destination. You know, because my God, I don't know. Just don't. So don't text and drive. Don't drink and drive. Don't smoke and drive. Just pay attention to the road, people, please. Please. I would appreciate you guys not to hurt yourself in the weekend or any other time. So we'll continue with another story called "I Want to Be a Vampire." Apparently parts of it were inspired by a true story. Interesting. See how long? Okay, it's not that long. Okay. There was a teenage boy named Lorcan who said he wanted to be a vampire. Everyone thought he was just looking for attention. He didn't have any friends. All of the kids in school were afraid of him. He was odd looking, and his head seemed too large for his body. He was unnaturally thin, and his eyes were sunken and had dark circles around them. His cheeks were hollow, and his skin was a deadly shade of pale. He dressed in black from head to toe. He wore a long-necked trench coat and resembled a cape. When the other kids were playing sports, Lorcan would be sitting in the corner of the schoolyard engrossed in books. He collected books about vampires, devil worshipping, and Satan rituals. He read each and every one of them over and over again, feverishly underlining passages and taking notes. There were always strange rumors about him floating around the neighborhood. Some younger children claimed they had seen him murder a dog and drink his blood. Others said that he would kidnap cats in the neighborhood and bring them home so he would perform weird experiments on them. His parents were worried sick about him. His odd behavior unnerved them, and they didn't know what to do with him. They brought him to the doctors and the psychiatrist, but none of it did any good. One night his mother found some of the books. When she realized they were about Satanism, she was worried and threw them in the garbage. Lorcan didn't complain or protest, but his parents went to bed, he crept downstairs and went outside to retrieve his beloved books from the trash. The next day, he made a big hole in the ceiling of the wardrobe, where it was his secret passage, and it allowed him to crawl up into the attic unnoticed. He kept all his books there, safe from prying eyes. The attic became his secret place. He even constructed a makeshift altar and decorated it with satanic symbols, upside-down crosses, and crude drawings of the devil. One night, he broke into the local church and stole a silver chalice and some communion wafers. He brought them home and placed them in the altar. During the day, Lorcan was sleeping and lethargic, but at night, he would come alive. While his mother and father were asleep, he would creep around the house barefoot, trying not to make the slightest of sounds. Sometimes he would creep soundlessly into their bedroom and stand over them, watching them peacefully slumber. One day, the teacher gave everyone in the class an assignment. They had to write an essay entitled "When I Grow Up." The teacher asked if anyone wanted to read their essay out loud to the class, and Lorcan raised his hand. He stood in the front of the blackboard, holding a crumpled piece of paper and clearing his throat. When I grow up, he began, I want to be a vampire. The other kids rolled their eyes and giggled. Lorcan was so excited the paper was shaking in his hands. I want to sleep in a coffin, he continued. I want to surround myself with death. I want to dedicate myself to evil and get revenge on all my enemies. I will surrender my soul to Satan and accept him as my Lord and Savior. That's enough, Lorcan, the teacher interrupted. Lorcan ignored her and grew louder. None of his classmates were giggling now. I want to drink the blood of little boys and girls and feel it coursing through my veins. I want to sink my teeth into the soft flesh of my victims and feel their hot blood trickling down my throat. Stop it, Lorcan, the teacher cried. Sit down. I want to rip them open, pull out their insides, and feast on their entrails. I want to destroy every living thing. I want to burn the world. I want to kill everyone who made fun of me. The teacher lunged at him, snapped the paper out of his hands. Lorcan clawed at her, and screamed like a mad thing. As she grabbed him from the neck and marched him off to the principal's office, he was yelling, I want to be a vampire, and I want to kill you all. I want to kill you all. Lorcan was suspended from school, and his parents had to meet with the teacher at the school's principal. After that, everyone watched him like a hawk. Neighbors would pull their children off the street as if they saw him coming. Rumors spread quickly about him, and nobody wanted anything to do with him. One day, a little boy who lived in the neighborhood went missing. His parents searched for him, but there was no sign of him everywhere. It was as if he had vanished into thin air. The police were called, and they knocked on every door in the area, asking questions. One officer questioned Lorcan and noticed he was acting very nervous. The policeman had a bad feeling about the teenager, and he had, instead of speaking to his mother and father, Lorcan's parents went to the policeman and agreed to tell them to let him search the house. Lorcan grew even more nervous. The police officer searched Lorcan's room, but they didn't find anything suspicious. Then he opened the wardrobe and noticed a hole in the ceiling. But he poked his head up through the hole and peered in the attic. His eyes were greeted by a horrifying sight. Later, he would say it was the single most disturbing thing he had ever seen in his life. The dead body of the missing boy was hanging from the roof. His arms and legs were tied to the rafter of the attic in the shape of a crucifix. Beneath him was a satanic altar, surrounded by books on devil worshiping. On the altar was a silver chalice filled with blood. The policeman scrambled downstairs and raised the alarm. He shouted for his colleagues, and when he told them what he saw, they began to desperate to search for Lorcan. But the teenager was nowhere to be found. His parents had no idea where he was. The policemen on the street swore they didn't see anyone leave the house. Nobody could find any trace of the teenage boy. The police were baffled. They were sure there was no way the boy could have escaped without being noticed. It was a mystery. Later on, one of the officers did recall witnessing something strange. He said that just after all the commotion had started, he thought he saw something fly out of the upstairs window. It flapped its wings and disappeared into the night. Later on, one of the officers did recall witnessing something strange. He said that just after all the commotion had started, he thought he saw something fly out of nowhere from the upstairs window. It flapped its wings and disappeared into the night. He thought his eyes were playing tricks on him, but he could have sworn it was a large bat, like black bat. The story was actually inspired by a real-life murder that happened in Ireland in 1973. A young boy named John Horgan went missing. When the police investigated, they began to suspect a teenage boy who lived next door. They searched his house, and in his attic, they discovered the dead body of a young boy. He had been tied to the rafters of the attic in a crucifixion pose. Underneath him, there was an altar, a silver chalice, and some satanic books, of course, in real life. The teenager boy didn't turn to a vampire, but escaped. He was arrested and sent to jail for his terrible crime. Wow. I mean, whew, that is interesting. Like, when I was a kid, when everybody was a kid, there was no way you cannot tell me, hey, look, vampires are cool. I would like to be a vampire. Now, hell no, dude. When I was a kid, I was like, screw vampires. I want to be a werewolf. Up until I saw the movie, I forgot what it was. I think it was a werewolf in London, I think it was. And let me tell y'all, I don't want to be a werewolf anymore. Holy God, the transformation the werewolves go, it just very I don't know what to say. I seriously don't know what to say because it just frightened me a lot. But with that being said, guys, thank you guys for coming. I really do appreciate it. This has been the After Dark Podcast, episode 11, and you know, I unfortunately have to go do work in the kitchen. But you know, so tomorrow we may have the same time again, 8:30, and we'll just get off at 9:30 as well. And then come Monday, it'll be the same at 9, and we'll end at 10. And Monday, Tuesday, the same. And then Wednesday being the After Dark special. So thank you guys for coming. I really do appreciate it. If you guys want to follow me on Twitter, you can do so. The link is in the description below. You can chat, send pictures, send memes, send anything you guys want. You know, I'll read them. We're all friends, right? And I'll laugh with you. You can send also your horror stories, which, you know, you have what? Tomorrow, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. 4 days. I was about to keep going. 4 days for me to tell you stories out in the podcast. So if you guys have any stories that you guys want to share with me, send them over to my Twitter with the hashtag TheAfterDarkPodcast S2 for season 2 or hashtag TADPS2. Once again, it's hashtag TheAfterDarkPodcast or hashtag TADPS2, and I'll read them and, you know, give full credit to whoever sends them to me, right? Because that's how it is, right? If you guys want to follow me on Instagram, you can do so too. I am an artist. I am a digital artist, a traditional artist, and you know, not like normally. I post every Wednesday and Saturday from 8 to 9 a.m. California time. But since it is October, I am partaking in the Inktober challenge, which is me drawing every day and making new drawings every day. And you know, so October's about to end, which the challenge is about to end. So we might go back to the same schedule as before. Maybe, I'm not too sure. Maybe it'll change because I got used to drawing every day now. Maybe it'll change. I don't know. Who knows? We're just gonna have to wait and see. So if you guys want to see my work up to now, the link is in the description below. I did do a comic panel again today because, you know, the prompt word was lightning and it's kind of weird. So It's kind of weird doing it. So if you guys want to see my work, it's all in Instagram right now. So, and by the way, I did say that if we do get to 250 followers, I will either make a live stream or a video of me drawing. So the video would be like sped up, and I would like commentate over it, and or just have music on it. You know, whichever one you guys want. Or if you guys want to stay here with me, like an hour or 2 hours long, of me trying to draw something. But it is gonna happen. So every 50, like 50, you know. So I mean, like thinking about like 250, 300, 350, 400, 450, etc., etc., etc. So yeah, that's happening. If you guys wanna, you know, please subscribe. That'll you know make me happy, make me a happy camper, and hopefully I can make you guys at least laugh, or you know be entertained for a couple minutes, and you know. So, but please do subscribe. Like I said, November comes, and I will be, you know, making videos now. You know, not just live streams. So live streams are gonna be something like something special, I guess. Like I would live stream like at least like once a week, I guess. Like once I get good at making videos. But you know, so that all comes in November. So yeah. With that being said, the movie recommendation for tonight is. You guys ready for this? You guys better be sitting down for this because we're going back to the 1959. Okay, 1959. What is it? Horror film called House on Haunted Hills. House on Haunted Hills. Dude, I mean, if you guys want to watch the 1999 version, I guess it's okay. But the 1959, it's where it's at. I believe it is in black and white. And it's the best because, you know, black and white movies have something to it that colorized movies don't have it. But go watch it. 1959, an American horror film directed by William Castle, produced by William Castle and Rob White, written by Rob White. All right, let me see. Its release date was on February 17, 1959. So. And it runs for 75 minutes, which is roughly around an hour and 15 minutes. So it's pretty short, and you guys have enough time right now. So like around 10:50ish, 11, somewhere around there, you guys will be done. And it's a good movie. Just go watch it. Go watch it. Go. Yeah, it's a pretty good 1959 movie. So thank you guys for coming. I really do appreciate it that you guys are staying here with me on the live stream. Or if you guys are listening to me in the playback on YouTube, once again, I do apologize for the noise in the background. You know, I don't have that type of power to be silencing them because, you know, it's we live in an apartment. I live in an apartment, and you know, I think they have the right to make as much noise as they want all the way until like 11, like 12, I think. But they sometimes go overboard, and you know, whatever. Let them have the party. So like I said, tomorrow maybe the live stream might go up early as well. So on that note, make sure to always bring a flashlight. Never walk alone on an empty street. And always, I mean always, double check your surroundings because you may never know who or what can be lurking after dark. Peace out, everybody. Have a great and safe night. And have a great and safe weekend. Until next time.